My life was complicated. I think what happened in my life was I grew up in a very dysfunctional house. I grew up where I had a mother who served Christ with all her heart, and a father who was a drug addict and an alcoholic. You know, as a young man growing up, it was kind of hard because you were looking for the role model or the influence to attach yourself to so that you can grow and develop. And I couldn't find that, not in my house anyway. So, at age 14 years old, you're looking for answers. I used to leave the house and, you're looking for all your friends in school and people you can hang out with. And one of my close friends to me, who's, one of my best friends today, his father used to work for my uncle selling drugs. He was a big-time dope dealer. I was trying to duplicate my life to be his, but with style, because, I wasn't really a fighter. I think I was born more to be a lover, but, I couldn't find love in those places. Things got more complicated after age 14. I mean, like I said, I turned to the streets. I was around a lot of influential people, and me myself, I wanted to be an influential person. But one thing that really sticks out is that, I found myself trying to be a player. Trying to get out there and, get with every girl out there that I could possibly get with, and start taking names and numbers and start putting them in my little book. So you can set the record of how many opportunities you've had sex with women. And I can tell you, at 15 years old, I was very active out there. I was chasing every girl you could think of. And the funny thing is, it was happening. Sex was available, it was happening. And at age 16, just before I turned 16, I already had my first kid. And by age 18, I already had my second child right before I graduated high school. So I started, working at a nightclub, and I can tell you that literally, I probably slept with a new girl at least every week. And I didn't have any love or emotions for women. It was really just about having sex. And I'm enjoying life. I mean, I'm taking names and numbers and making appointments, basically. I mean, there was a time in my life where I was sleeping with 4 girls in the same day, and, I took those chances. I took every chance you can think of. And I think what happened in my life is I had a big scare. And, it was one of those things where, sex will catch up to you. So if you abuse it and you do it, beyond the guidelines of what God has called you to do, then you're going to have penalty to pay too. So the next 6 months to a year of my life was some of the worst things I ever experienced in my life, because I lived every day in fear that I was HIV positive. And I can tell you, every day of my life, I fell to my knees. I started going back to church, and I started making promises to God saying, hey, I did it wrong for a lot of years, and if this is the opportunity and the chance that you brought in my life for me to change, then here I am. And when the results came in and the doctor told me that I was negative, I was absolutely ecstatic, and I felt like, wow, maybe this was a breakthrough. Maybe this is the chance that God said, here you go, you're going to have this chance. And I took it, I took it and I ran with it, and I said, okay. So I started going to church. I started, dedicating my life to Christ, and I still found myself falling and slipping. I still found myself talking to girls. I still found myself out there, still having sex, and it was a struggle, a big struggle for me, And I started to realize that it wasn't sex that I was struggling with, it was lust. I didn't have respect for these women, I didn't love them. So it was more lust than love. So knowing these things, that I didn't have the respect for them, I continued to do my thing. I still went out there, still, worked at clubs, still had plenty of girlfriends, I still started having plenty of sex. The third great thing that happened in my life was a very good friend of mine who sung with me in a group. And Del was one of these guys who I knew that God had a purpose for him. And this man had an incredible gift to sing. I mean, an incredible gift. He's one of the most talented singers I've ever heard in my life. And he made a comment to me one day, because everywhere we used to go out, he used to tell me, man, how do you do it, man? I mean, you say things to girls and they just respond. And how do you do it, man? And this guy was a virgin. And I kept telling him, stay a virgin. At 20 years old, I kept telling him, stay a virgin. Trust me, Del. There's nothing good out here for you. Don't be entertained by what you see me do. Don't do what I do, because it destroyed me, and I'm trying to get back what I lost. And he's like, man, Dave, but you've got it, man. I mean, look, every time we go places, you can say things, stupid things, and they listen. I'm blown away. I don't see Del for about a year. He disappears, decides, he wants to go to college, and he does. And, God bless him. He goes to college and he decides to go to a few parties and get involved with college life. So he's at a party and decides, I'm going to do it. Meets this girl. She decides I'm going to have sex with him. And he decides to give up his virginity. And as he does that, he didn't realize that she was HIV positive. And I'm one of the first people that he wants to tell that he has AIDS. And I never cried so hard in my life. I still do today because I think a lot of what he went through was because of me. And how I lived, he looked up to me. And he wanted to be like me. And I told him, don't be like me. And I hold myself accountable for that because I love him. And I wanted him to stay a virgin. I wanted him to meet the right girl and get married and do the right things and not be the way I was. And that's not what happened. I didn't understand at the time why the Bible was important. I didn't understand that the Bible was in place so that these kind of things wouldn't happen. But because we're ignorant to the world and we just sit here and just don't want to pay attention to what Jesus wants to tell us, we decide that, hey, we can live life, we can do these things. We don't need God. My turning point, I talked about the third girl that came into my life and I married her. She came into my life and there was still a healing point in my life, a boundary that I still wouldn't allow her to cross. And even as we dated, I still continued to be, who I was. I still cheated on her. I still, I didn't hold the value of a relationship. I didn't understand the value of a relationship. Even through my marriage, I've struggled. I've struggled a lot because in the beginning stages of our marriage, I still had to understand how to treat a woman. Now, you guys have to understand something. When you grow up in a house where a man doesn't treat a woman with honor, it's pretty natural that the inheritance that child is carrying is the same thing. And I had to learn how to become a man and give up being an adolescent. Give up being a thug, give up being a womanizer, a player. And that was really hard to do, and I struggled with it. Even when we got married and my pastor married us at church, it was still something that I struggled with because I still didn't know how to love her. I still felt like love was defined as sex. I didn't know that love was greater than just sex. To me, love was sex. And it wasn't until, 3 or 4 years ago that we found strength. We found strength in God. It was where we decided to sell out and start giving God what is God's and start doing what God has asked us to do. And it wasn't until then that I understood that God put this woman in my life with purpose. And she taught me how to surrender. She taught me, what it is to treat a woman and what a woman expects of a man, rather than what my interpretation of how to treat a woman was. And those kind of things for me, helped me grow at a whole nother level. And it also helped me deal with life's challenges of lust. The struggles that I've had to live and face is a testimony that I don't share very, very often. And only because it's something that I had struggled with in my life, and I didn't know how personal I should really be with my life. But I can tell you that what God allowed me to live through, He didn't ask me to keep to myself. And that's relevant because you can see that in every disciple, and even in Jesus Christ's life. He didn't keep His life to Himself because we got to hear about it and read about it. And I can tell you that what we go through in our life is not for us to keep to ourselves, but it's for us to share.